Hi guys. Okay, so this is my first video. It's gonna be awkward. I am doing a little video here on the supplies you need for dyeing. The number one most important supply is your dye. Okay, so I chose an eye dye poly with color intensifier. This is specifically for a polyester blend. Okay, this is the mesh fabric. Okay, this is a Phee white poly blend mesh. Okay, I bought this off of Dharma Trading Company online, and they have a whole variety of dyes for every single kind of fabric, like literally every single kind. So what you want to do is find out what the fabric content is. If you cannot find it from where you purchased it, you can do a burn test. There are a million resources online for burn tests to find out the fabric content. All right, now I'm going to stop this and switch the camera around. Okay, so we have our dye, we have our fabric. Now, this whole kit and caboodle needs to be green. This is the green I want to get closest to. I have it with me because I'm going to be trying to get close to it, or in the color family. It's not going to be exact. I'm going to have a bunch of different greens. The tights I ordered are going to be a bright green. I'm going to have leaves that are an ivy green, and that's okay. All right. So when you're dyeing, a mess will be made, intentionally or not. So you want to prepare your surface. This is my lovely little kitchen. It's small. All right. I have my bun over there. Okay, so there are ways to prevent too much horrible mess, okay? Plastic drop cloths are wonderful, and always tape them in place. You think, oh, they won't move. Trust me, they'll move. The other thing that is amazing, it wasn't just sitting here for shits and giggles, is Glad Press and Seal, okay? This stuff sticks to your counter. It's amazing. I buy it in bulk at Sam's Club, and it's fantastic. Always keep cleaning supplies with you on the ready as well. Paper towels, Clorox wipes, and a Mr. Clean sponge. This one is my one I use for my nasty stuff. This way, you're ready if you spill on anything that you don't want to get it on, okay? You can clean it up right away, and you're prepared. The other thing that's very important when you're dyeing is to use things like a brand new pot that is specifically only for dyeing. Okay, this pot is only going to be used for dyeing. I bought it for about $7 at Walmart. The reason I need a big pot is because I want my fabric to move freely in the pot. I believe this is a 6-quart pot. All right. The other thing is wooden spoons, brand new. 68 cents at Walmart, 98 cents, something like that. These will only be used for dyeing. I'm using wooden spoons versus plastic spoons because if I'm using too high of a heat, I don't want the plastic to melt. The other thing is latex gloves. All right, these are going to be high wrist, so they're not going to get dye up to my elbows. The other thing, particle masks. All right. They're uncomfortable, but you don't want to suffocate yourself. All right. So these are my basic tools for dyeing. All right. Other than my stove. The other thing you want to make sure you have is read the directions on your dye container. All right. It'll tell you what you need. This particular dye is fantastic because you don't need any other contents other than the dye packet and the color intensifier. Some dyes you'll need salt, some dyes you'll need soda ash, you'll need vinegar. It just depends. So buy your dye, open it up, read it. They're all going to have directions, or if they don't have directions on the packet, say it comes in a big jug, it'll have it on the website where you purchased it, or the store that you purchased it will come with directions. Just make sure you read the directions. Don't open it up, start mixing it, and then read the directions. Read them thoroughly before you start. All right, welcome to Shea Meth Lab. So everything is set up. One thing I forgot to add, plastic melts. So I put foil on the stove, so if anything spills, I'm not going to spend hours cleaning it up. Some people might be neater than me, but I'm not neat. I make messes. The other thing I forgot to add is this is a stovetop method. Polyester requires a high heat to retain the dye, and so when you're dyeing polyester, they do recommend stovetop method. There are other methods that you can do. There's cold process dyes, which take longer. There are dyes that you can do in the washing machine. Just follow the directions on your dye container. Different types of dyes for different fabrics require different temperatures. You wouldn't want to dye something like silk on the stovetop because it can damage the material. It all depends on what the fabric content is and what types of dyes you use. Some dyes need higher temperatures, much like polyester. Some of them, using a washing machine works just as fine. This will have a higher color saturation because what I'm going to do is I'm going to agitate it the entire time. I'm basically going to stir it the whole time. And it's going to be at a simmer. It's like making soup. I'm going to make dye soup. Not going to be very tasty. So here is what we have. As I said, everything's taped off. It looks like we're making meth. We're not. This is much more legal and probably less financially profitable, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to turn this around again so you all can see things. Okay, so the directions on the dye package say that you want to fill the pot with enough warm water for the fabric to move freely. Basically, here's your test. You take your fabric, this is 2 yards, you put it in. This is going to be a little bit tight, but it does still move, so it would be better if I had a larger pot, but I do not. So what I'm going to do, don't mind the dirty sink, is I'm going to warm the water up. Okay, so most dye processes require your fabric to be pre-wetted. So I'm sticking the fabric in here and getting it wet. My fabric is already washed. I washed it without any fabric softener. I did wash it with detergent. I always wash my fabric with detergent, usually free and clear detergent, because you never know what was on the truck, what was on the bolt, what was in the factory, what was in the warehouse. It's personal preference. You don't necessarily have to, but I always have washed my fabric. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fabric out. I'm going to wring out as much of the water as I can, and I'm going to move the pot to the sink, to the stove rather. Okay, so one small recommendation, clear off as much of the counter space as you can. As you can see, I only have my wipes, my bare necessities on the counter next to the stove. I've moved everything else over here. I have a pre-torn off stack of paper towels because you never know when you're going to need to grab them, and it's a lot easier to grab a single paper towel than to tear them off a roll. And I have my fabric that I want to match over here. Okay, and I have my other fabric sitting in the sink waiting for me, and my methed out kitchen, taped, and then my press and seal, and I have my one spoon pulled out. Try to use only one. It's just easier. And see, I have this set up there. It's just less of a mess. So my pot is about 3/4 full. All right, so remember, I squeezed out most of the water from my fabric. So this is going to have to be enough water to saturate. I do not have soap in here. My water is really bad. San Bernardino County water. It sucks. My next step, according to my fancy directions here, is we're going to add the iodide soluble packet and the iodide color intensive to the water and stir until dissolved. That's these two fabulous things. So this is the dye. See how it looks brown? Most dye packet colors do not look the color they are. So that's why you always want to keep them in the box until you're ready to use them. Even if you remove them for one reason or other, package opens, it gets lost, it gets wet, put it in a Ziploc bag with the label, because otherwise you're going to be like, oh, this is brown. It's totally brown. See how it's brown on the corners there? It's not. It's green. These are a pain in the butt to open. Always open them over the pot. Otherwise, it will make a mess. I've heard from a friend. All right, so we're gonna open these and put them in the water. Can't do that holding the camera, so gotta turn it on. One thing I forgot to mention before you open the dye packet, gloves and mask. It's really attractive, I know, and it might get uncomfortable. Turn on a fan. Not directly, that's gonna blow anything around. Turn it on in another room, blowing the air into the room. These are just basic safety precautions. Anytime you use hazardous materials or toxic materials, you want to use basic safety, okay? Particulate mask and gloves. These are a little big on me. As you can see, I have childlike hands, and I accidentally grabbed large, extra large, but they'll still work. They're just kitchen gloves. I got them at Harbor Freight, two pairs for $2. They're nice and cheap, but they work. If you're worried about the heat of the water, it's boiling. I've used these to make this style of glove to make cheese before, where you use hot water, and they actually protect a little bit from the heat. But if you're concerned, you can put Kevlar gloves, the grill kind of gloves, inside these. Just go a size up when you get your gloves. But you're generally not going to be touching much with them. These are mostly just to protect your skin from the dyes. Those are the biggest things. Safety, safety, safety. If you're concerned about your eyes, wear glasses, safety goggles, something like that. They always steam up for me, so I can never see. So you just want to make sure that your lungs are safe and your hands are safe. All right. This is our color intensifier. Okay, if you look at that, see, utensils and pot for dyeing should not be used for food. We talked about that. And it recommends a stainless, aluminum, or enamel pot. That's basically just because the dye doesn't seep into it. And it wants us to add it and turn on the heat. So we're going to turn it on high, and then add the packet and stir it until it's dissolved, and then we're going to put the fabric in. So then we're going to keep stirring it as it goes for about half hour to an hour, and I'm just going to keep going until it's the color I want it to be. That's how we determine the color. Really, you just keep an eye on it. That's how dyeing works. It's a very non-scientific process. Stovetop dyeing, you have a little bit more control than if you dye it in the washing machine, because you're actually looking at it and watching it. This has benzyl benzenate. I have no idea what that is, but see how it's avoid inhalation, eye contact? You just want to protect yourself. It's not necessarily something that you want to play with bare hands. So that's why we're protecting ourselves. All right, we're gonna go and see what we do here. All right, so it's our little clear liquid. This is our stuff to make it nice and bright. Okay, so this is what our magic pot of wonder looks like. Do you see those chunks? Basically, when you have a powder surrounded by liquid, sometimes you get chunks like that. So what I do is I literally just push them up against the side and they break up. It takes a little bit of time for them to dissolve, okay? It's kind of frustrating and it'll get annoying, but you just got to keep going, just keep stirring, and they will eventually dissolve. Sometimes you got to help them along, push them against the sides, and squish them, make sure they get dissolved. You do not want to put your fabric in while you still have chunks of dye. Then that's how you get splotchy dye. But it's a nice dark green, and I'm going to let it see what floats to the surface, see if any more chunks of dye. It's looked like it's pretty good. I'm going to try really hard not to drop my phone in the pot, because that would be horrible. But it looks like we're good. I don't see any chunks. So I'm going to put the fabric in. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. But see where we don't use these for food? Pretty gnarly. Alright, let's see here. Alright, so there is our fabric. It's dripping minimally because I squeezed it out pretty good. Alright, I'm going to put it in slowly, just in case I have too much water in here. Alright, so it's nice and slow. Alright. See, it's already starting to color. So there we are. It's in there. It's pretty full, but that's okay, because we want it to be able to move. Alright, see how it's still moving? It can move. The fabric can move within the pot. That's what we're going for. I would have liked a bigger pot for this much fabric, but we're okay. I might pull it up a little. So, see, this is a little bit fast. See how quickly it takes the color? but I'm gonna let it go longer because when you rinse fabric, it comes out. Polyester is technically a poly fiber, meaning that it's a plastic fiber. And anytime you dye anything with a plastic, you need heat and you need time. Those are the two most important things. Anytime you dye anything that's acetate, anything that's acrylic, you need time and you need heat. And polyester is no different. Okay, so we're gonna just keep going and see where we can get. Okay, so we're at the boiling. It's been going for about 35 minutes, and if you remember when it first went in, it was kind of an army green, and now it's this luscious Kelly green, forest green color, and we only had one boil over, but Meth Lab foil to the rescue. See, that's why I cover everything, and I want to just protect everything. So it only put the fire out once on the gas stove, but keeping it moving is gonna help keep the color even. There might be a couple dark spots right now. Hopefully those will come out when we wash it. So what's gonna happen next is I'm gonna move it to the sink, and then I'm gonna dump the dye out. What I'm gonna do as I'm dumping the dye out is I'm going to move very carefully, very slowly, and I'm gonna use those handy dandy pot holders. I'm going to use pot holder gloves, one on each hand, and I'm going to let it cool a little bit. I'm going to turn off the heat right now. Okay. I did at one point have to put the lid on to get the heat higher. It wasn't boiling for most of the time it was on the stove because the heat couldn't get hot enough because there's so much fabric in there, which is okay because it's still got to be a dark green. All right. It's not the same color as the package, but one of the things you should do, which I did not do because I very rarely do it, is a swatch. Okay, basically you take a small piece of your fabric and you dye it in the pot and figure out what your color is going to be. I never do swatches because A, I'm lazy, and B, I like the surprise. Okay, so excuse me, we are ready to go. Okay, so we just took it off the stove. We've moved it over here. It is still very hot. Okay, so when I pour it out, I have cold water running in the sink. Okay, so that's going to help it from getting too much hot splash. And it's going to, we're going to start running water over the fabric. That's going to start our rinsing process. The rinsing process takes a while. You have to rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse. One other way to get around this is put it in the rinse cycle of your washing machine. I don't have a washing machine. I only have a laundry room here, so I generally am just going to wash it by hand. I may fill up the sink and kind of agitate it that way. You want to get it rinsed out. It doesn't have to be completely rinsed out because you are going to wash it in a mild detergent. I use either Free and Clear or a similar type of detergent when I wash dyed items. Actually, when I wash everything. So, we're dumping here. See how it's running over everything? But see, as I'm pouring slowly, it's not going to splash up. It's also not going to dye everything. That's our big thing, okay? And there's a lot of steam because it's really hot. It's been boiling. All right, so I'm taking off my oven mitt, letting the water go down. This will all come off, okay? Now we're going to turn the cold water on a little higher, okay? Okay, so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm bringing down the temperature of the water. And as I'm doing it, I'm pushing into the fabric. So I'm kind of like squishing it. And that's going to help get the dye inside out. And if you see, my water's already running clear. I've only been doing this for a couple of minutes. I only turned off the camera for a couple minutes, maybe a minute and a half, okay? So see, the water's already starting to run clear because we've gotten most of that excess dye out. All right? Okay, so see how that's already, okay. And that is how I dye polyester blend fabrics on a stovetop method. This is a photo of the final color before I did a washing machine run through the wash cycle. And if you'll notice in the notes, I added a list of the supplies that I used. This method will actually work with any polyester blend of the Phee Fabrics. So it'll work with the white tricot, it'll work with the circular knit, and pretty much anything that has a similar fabric content. Just have a look at the fabric contents, and then you can have a look at the dye types, and you should be able to dye anything. You don't have to start with a white fabric. If you're looking to go to a darker color, you can start with a different color base as well. Just I would recommend doing a swatch on that so you can see where you start and where you go. If you have any questions, you can email me at alyssamosier@gmail.com, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions if I know the answer. If not, I can find a resource for you.